Hi, so in this video, we're going to look at project startup. And the first thing we're going to do is import our model. And to do that, we're going to click on File up here on the main menus. And you don't want to click Open. What you want to do is click New. And when you do that, you get this pop-up. Um, the only setting on this window you need to worry about is the normal map format, and you want to make sure for Second Life that it says OpenGL. The document resolution has to do with the resolution of the windows. It doesn't in any way degrade the material. It's until you export it, you can easily go back and forth, change your document resolution depending on your computer, the complexity of the model, so on and so forth. I usually just leave it at 2048. And even this you can change later, but it's easier if you just have this correct. The rest of this we don't need to worry about. And we don't need to worry about selecting a template. So to bring in our model, what we want to do is click on this, select, and then we're going to navigate over to our FBX export. Again, it'll also accept OBJs, Collada, and a bunch of other formats, but the preferred one is FBX. And if you remember in the first video, we created exports both with individual materials and a single material of those basic shapes. I'm going to go ahead and select the one that has only one material. And then I'm just going to say open. And then I'm going to say OK. And then Substance Painter will bring it in. Now, the first thing I do is I check that everything looks okay, because sometimes if you made a mistake exporting the 2D view, it may look odd, or the model may look odd. So everything looks good here. So our model is in. What's next? Now, you recall in a previous video, we looked at these various maps and they were all empty because we hadn't created anything out yet. Substance Painter is really a 2D um, texture making program, and these 2D textures get applied to 3D models to create a material. Um, but Substance Painter, in order to uh, correctly apply the textures to the 3D model, first needs to extract basic maps from the model. For example, the height map, the normal, um, and all these maps, that the curvature, it needs to extract all of this information from the model and turn it into 2D maps. So how do we go about doing that? And until you do this, Substance Painter can't really apply materials because, again, it's a 2D texture creating program, and it needs 2D textures to in order to know how to apply the digital information. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so how do we create our base maps, extract this information from a 3D model and turn it into 2D maps that Substance Painter can use? So we go to our texture set settings, and this is where all the information and the settings for the set of textures that both make up the um, base information for the model, as well as how we set it up for the materials you want to apply, and all live in this window. So if you scroll down um, under mesh maps, you'll notice that right now it just has a bunch of labels, but there's no actual maps. So it says normal map and um, occlusion map, etc. There's a bunch of labels for maps with no maps. So we want to create them by clicking Bake Mesh Maps, and you'll see it'll open up a separate window. And in this window, you'll see some familiar things. For example, your texture set list will be listed here. Now, if I had more than one material, I could choose which ones I wanted to bake or not bake. In this case, I only have one, so it's clicked by default. Um, here, it lets me pick which maps I wanted to create. I usually just click all of them. I'd rather have an extra map that I don't need than need one that I don't have. Um, and you can click on each individual map and add some additional parameters. I don't really know um, what those are, but as we become more advanced. The main one I need to worry about is common settings. So if I click on common settings over here, the again, it gives you an opportunity to select the output size, which is again only internal to Substance Painter. You the resolution of your ultimate texture you select as you export. Dilation width has to do with the padding around each UV island. I personally prefer to have that at about 8. Um, Under high poly parameters, if I had a high poly mesh, I would click on this tiny little sheet here, and it would open up a window that would allow me to import the high poly model. But since I don't have one, I'm going to click on this little box where it says use low poly mesh as high poly mesh. Click on that. The rest of this I leave alone. I don't like to average my normals. And the only other thing that I change is the anti-aliasing, and I changed that to 4. If you have a more powerful computer, you can increase that, but 4 usually is plenty. And now we're ready to bake. Down here, you'll notice it says baking progress. Once we start baking, you'll see it run through all of these maps, and it'll be fun. Okay, so we're gonna click on bake selected textures, and right now these are all this. I've selected all of them. Click on that, and it will go through, and one by one you can see them light up. It will create each of the maps. And right now, like I said before, what it's doing is extracting the information from the 3D model and turning them into texture maps for us. So now it's done. You can see it's done all the maps. And over here, we click on Return to Paint mode. Now, I can click on that. I can also, up here on the right, you see the little paintbrush. I can also click on this one and return to the paint mode. Okay, so remember our texture set list before it just had a bunch of labels but no maps? Now it's populated with maps. And some of these are still going to be empty because we haven't added any layers, but you'll see that now they're starting to be populated. This one will still have nothing because you actually have to add a layer. But down here, the mesh mats that we created, you can now see them. Okay. So now you have set your model up. It has its base maps that Substance Painter is going to use, and you've imported it, and you're ready to start applying materials.